Yes, sir. You can start.
Hello, good evening. I am Vasant Bhatt, Mumbai partner of Hiregange and Associates. I welcome you all for this webinar on real estate issues and possible alternatives. Since last few years, this particular industry is facing a lot of challenges. One after another challenges keep coming. Now this COVID-19 has added one more. So our objective of this today's discussion is to find out the various issues wherein we can try some solution, maybe approaching to government or even court, how this the present difficulties faced by real estate can be reduced to some extent by way of some policy change, maybe in GST or any other acts. So today's speakers are Mr. Madhukar Hiregange and Mr. Sudhir. I would like to briefly introduce today's speakers. Mr. Madhukar Hiregange, normally he doesn't need introduction, but as a formality, I need to introduce him. He is our founding partner and is based at Bangalore. He was Central Council member twice, and he was also the chairman of Indirect Tax Committee of ICAI. He has written more than 18 books in the area of GST, Central Excise Service Tax, and also Karnataka VAT. And he has been faculty and a regular speaker at various forums and also a regular writer at various forums and magazines. And coming back to Mr. Sudhir, he is our Hyderabad partner and he is also a regular speaker and writer at various forums. He has co-authored many books, including one on real estate very recently. And he has done his entrepreneurship development program from IIM Ahmedabad also. So with this brief introduction, I would like to request Mr. Sudhir to start the session. And at the end of the session, there will be question and answer. In the chat box, question box, you can raise your questions. We will be discussing those answers for those questions. Thank you. Sudhir, can you start, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Vasan, for my introduction. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this webinar today. This is on looking at some possible issue that could be coming up with the recent crisis which things have been going on, and also looking at what are the possible alternatives for the tax optimization. So that is the aim of the webinar today. So I will be taking you through some critical practical issues which you would be facing, and also some alternatives which you could look at to save some taxes at this juncture. So the coverage would be to start with, I'll give you only a very broad general overview. I'm not going into depth of the taxability or otherwise, because all of you are already doing the compliance as far as the GST is concerned, as far as the real estate. So I am not going into any fundamentals, but I'll be straight away jumping into issues. But I'll just give you a very broad brief outline, and we will look at various possibilities of tax optimization. Then what is the best practice which we need to be taking? So the session will be divided between me and my partner Madhukar. So few portions I'll be taking and he will be switching in between. So that is how we'll be taking. So all the questions, as Mr. Vasan sir has requested, you can put this in the question answer box, and at the end of the session we will answer most of the questions. Otherwise also you are free to write this any query which you are getting because of today's session to any of the point of contact from our office who is in touch with you, partner or any of the managers who is in touch with you. You could feel free to write to them any queries which is coming out of today's session. So with this, I would take you through first, before getting into the overview, let's look at how the COVID has impacted the economy. So most of the people would have already looked into it. There is a lot of data and analysis which is coming as far as how the economy is been there around the GST. So the estimation is that the GST could be reduced around 1.5 to 0.5%, which could be less than 5%, which was estimated 6% plus was the estimation. So it could be somewhere in 4. This is what the current GDP is also all about, or it could go further down. We are not very sure. But there was a very good package which has been given as far as the finance ministry is concerned in terms of putting more money into the market. I think that will have some impact for early recovery is what I think so. Then recovery is going to take time, U-shape recovery by the end of the financial year. So if you look at a graph, the U-shape in the sense the bottom is going to stand for a while. There are few sectors which is going to go for an V-shape recovery, like very, very basic essential, like maybe the saloons and all those things. The moment things opens, then they will go back to whatever they were doing the business earlier. So U-shape is what in general things are there. There are products which is the luxury products. Unfortunately, maybe real estate, where whichever the projects which is dealing with a high-end villas or high-end commercial spaces, maybe something like a malls and all, is something where the recovery may take more time than the end of the financial year is what has been expected. Then rupee depreciation is something which has happened good. Sorry, oil price is something happened good for the economy, but that gets offset with the rupee which is being depreciated. So not much thing which could look at from that. So overall general business impact is that there will be a reduction in the consumer spending. There is going to be a reduction in the profits. Fear of employees working would reduce the productivity. A lot of people may not be coming for the work, and there has been a recent open up for the construction in many parts of the country. However, there are no people for the construction activity to be started and going on. So there is going to be a lot of slowdown to that extent, which we could be looking at. So stress on the bank could also have impact the credit growth. So there is going to have a stress on the bank also because of the defaults, or maybe because of non-payment, or many other things which the consumer finance could be going through. That is another thing which is there. The positivity is that this can also open up a new opportunities. A lot of people are looking at an exit from China, because this is when they realize that if they are too much dependent upon a single country, especially the pharma, the APIs and all, then it becomes very challenging for them to proceed. So maybe India could be the best alternative, but the question comes up is whether India is ready. So with all those things, it has been a said fact that yes, there is going to have some impact in the economy. It is not going to be as smooth as what it would have been gone if this crisis would have not come in place. With this, I will start with giving you a small overview. So the real estate scheme, most of you would be aware that the new projects which is starting after 1st of April 2019, there is a requirement to pay at 5% without ITC if it is a non-affordable housing, and if it is an affordable housing, it will be at 1% without input tax credit. So the definition of affordable housing is that it should be not more than 60 square meter and a value of 45 lakhs in case of a metro, and 90 square meter in non-metros with a value cap of same 45 lakhs. So this is for the computation of the affordable or otherwise, the 60 square meters is being taken as a carpet area. So that will be the same definition as what is there for your RERA. So this is what the scheme is all about. Then at the 1% and 5%, there is also an option for a commercial space within the residential complex, which is not exceeding 15%. That will also go at 5%. So all commercial projects is going to go at the 12% net effective rate with the ITC. A quick snapshot of how the rates have been changed pre and post is a small comparison chart here. I am not taking you through this because most of you would be already aware of this particular rates. So now let me start looking at the issue. So the common issues which is going to be looked at now is that when should I make the payment of tax? So as per the law, the payment of GST has to be made by the developer to the credit of the central government on achieving of the milestone which entitles you for a payment as per the AOS or receipt of money, whichever is earlier. So this is something which is required to be followed as per the provision of GST. Prior to introduction of GST, most of the builders, they were not following the milestone or receipt of money, whichever is earlier. They were purely going only by the receipt of money. What does this mean? Say, for example, I am one of your customer, and as per your agreement of sale, it says that on casting of fifth floor, I owe you 10% of my total agreement of consideration agreed in the agreement of sale. So, say for example, the casting has happened as on 20th of May. Then I builder, you are supposed to raise an invoice on me within maximum 30 days, and the date of invoice would be considered for the payment of tax. Now there is a crisis, then I will come to you and tell that if you are asking me to pay right away, then I don't have an option but to cancel. Give me 4 months time. After that only I'm going to pay this 10%, which is most likely is going to happen. Now the question comes up is whether the developer can defer the payment of applicable GST on this 10% of the consideration. Say for example, 1 crore is the flat and 10% is coming to 10 lakhs. So GST on that is either 5% or 12%, 1.2 lakhs or 50,000 as the case may be. When is that builder has to pay? So the builder typically, if he is raising an invoice, it will be the date of invoice, 20th of the next month he has to pay. If he is not in the habit of raising the invoice, it is the occurring of the milestone, that is the 20th May will be the triggering date, and by 20th of June you have to pay to the government even if you have not collected from the customer. So this is going to be having a huge hardship for the payment of GST. So now what is the thing which could be looked at as a alternative for this is that can you go and amend your agreement of sale? Now again there is a lot of challenges which is coming as far as the agreement of change, whether the RERA is going to permit. I have already have this with the banker. I have already filed it with various other places. But still you could look at having a supplementary agreement or an addendum to the original agreement only to the extent of the milestone of the payment which has been there, that whatever the payment clause is there, that only you look at, because you technically know this particular customer has made a specific request for 4 months waiver and you have also agreed upon it. So thereby if you can enter into a revised payment schedule with this particular agreement, then the GST also becomes payable as per the revised payment schedule. This is something which you could look at, and all those things is possible. It's natural. Nothing has been done here with an evasive intention. This is a genuine rescheduling of your payment schedule milestone, which is being done because of a reason, that is the crisis what we are going on. So I don't think so this could be questioned by the department in large. But however, there are department comes with their own legacy and their own way of looking at things, because they always feel that the businessman, especially the builder, is the biggest cheater. That is what they look at, perceive it. Unfortunately, it's not true, but that is what they look at, and thereby there is always a suspicion which has been raised. So wherever you are entering into a rescheduling your agreement, you could intimate this to the department to safeguard yourself from any hardship or the future notices. This is something which you could look at. Then the second issue will come up is that the interest which has been collected for delay payment of installment. So as per RERA also, it permits the developer to collect the interest if there is a delay in payment of installment which has been made by the customer. So whether this interest what you collect, whether it will be liable for GST. So the answer would be yes. Any amount which you have collected for the delay in receipt of the consideration, there is a specific valuation section which requires you to add it to the valuation and you have to pay the GST. However, the GST can be paid not on issue of the demand note for the invoice, demand note for the interest, but only on actual receipt of the money. That is the actual realization of the interest. That is the triggering point for you to pay the GST. Now the question comes up is, sir, what is the rate of GST which I need to pay? The rate of GST will be the same rate which is applicable to your installment. If you are under 5% scheme, 5%. If you are under 12% scheme, you are under 12%. So that is what is going to happen wherever you are able to charge and collect the interest for the delay receipt of the installment from your customer wherever possible, if at all you are doing this. Next issue would be that how the additional works is going to be treated. This is not a standalone issue which is coming because of the COVID crisis, but this is a standalone issue. It is not that something which is coming because of the crisis. This is a common question which has been asked. Sudhir, I had entered into an agreement sale for 1 crore, and there was an alteration requested by the customer, and thereby there was an additional work which was supposed to be done, which is coming to say about 10 lakh rupees. Now, how should I give a treatment for this 10 lakh rupees? So there are two options available for you. One option is that you can go back and amend your AOS, subject to if it is permitted as per your RERA and other provisions, which is possible. So thereby you will say the revised agreement of sale is 1.1 crores, and offer that 1.1 crores to either 5% or 12% as the case may be in whatever scheme you are in. So this is one option which is available to you, which is going to have a lower impact of the tax. Mind it, 5% is without ITC, 12% is with ITC. This will be having a lower impact of tax. However, if this has not been possible or you don't want to do it for various other reasons, then what could be done is that a new work order or an agreement or a purchase order, whatever is there, will be entered into as an additional scope of work, nothing to do with your deliverables which was originally agreed. So thereby this transaction would be treated as a separate transaction, and thereby 18% of GST has to be paid with eligibility of ITC. You are going to get an eligibility of ITC. So even if you are under 12%, you are eligible for ITC. So there is going to be a difference of 6% if you will be able to go for an amendment of the AOS. So this is something which you could look at for all the additional works which is going to having a best impact of tax. Then the other thing which could come up, the issue now is that many of the builders may be now looking at is underwriting their stock. So there is a particular investor and he has some money, and at this particular crisis you want to borrow the money. So there is a possibility where the stock has been underwritten or it has been sold to an investor. So this has been normally done to give a security to an investor. In sum and substance, this nature is that you are borrowing as a loan. But taking it as a loan, if you are a company, then it is whether it can be taken as a loan from a non-member of your company. All those things has a challenge from your company tax point of view and also from income tax point of view. So thereby this may not have been told as a loan, but if you can prove it as a loan in sum and substance, and whatever the flats has been allocated is only marked as a security against that, and in such case, for all this amount which you receive, no GST is required to be paid. So you have to look at whether you can come up with a particular model where you can structure this into a loan, thereby give a security, and save paying the GST on that is something which you could look at. If it is not possible, then all the amount what you have received, you have to pay the GST on the same at the applicable rate of 12% or 5% as the case may be. So most of the cases, this amount which comes comes as a one ad hoc amount. It will not come with a GST extra. Say if somebody is want to come and invest 10 crores with you, he is only going to give you 10 crores. The entire deal is for 10 crores. Now by chance you have to pay 1.2 crores, which is 12% of that, then that is going to be deducted from your 10 crores. So the net fund raised by you will not be 10 crores, it will be net of your GST. So thereby, if you can do a proper planning here in terms of the structuring into as a loan agreement, there are certain decisions which was been given under the old law, that is a service tax law, where if we were able to prove the commissioner appeals in Hyderabad, and we were able to prove that this was nothing but a loan agreement. There was a loan agreement. Of course, that was a partnership firm. It was not a private limited company. So thereby it was very easy in terms of other compliance there. And where we were able to prove it as a loan, and the service tax which was not paid was demanded by the department. That demand was dropped by the commissioner appeals. So this is something which I am giving you as a food for thought, if at all you are looking at any amount which you are looking at to be taking as a bulk sale as of now. If this is not possible, then what is going to happen is that you have to pay the applicable GST. Then the immediate question will happen is, Sudhir, what is going to happen when this is going to be reversed? Because I am clearly very sure that the investor who is giving the 10 crores, he is not interested in my property. He is not going to buy this property and is not going to come and stay here or use it as his office. So thereby the cancellation is very, very certain, which I know which is going to happen. So how can I treat this particular thing? So here the cancellation, there is a challenge. The provision says that you will be eligible to take the deduction of originally paid GST. In my example, I told 10 crores was the receipt and 1.2 crores was the GST what you paid. That 1.2 crores you can take it back from the department and adjust it against the sale during that particular month. Say for example, the amount has been given to you in May 2020 and the cancellation happens in say September 2021, or take it as August 2021. So in August 2021, there is some other sale which you have made, either this unit or other unit, whatever sale you have made, liability payable for the month of August 21, 1.2 crores will be reduced from this particular amount. So this is what is possible as per the law. However, this comes with a challenge which says that maximum allowable adjustment is only for that particular financial receipt which you have, financial year, for the receipt which you have received will be 30th September of the next financial year. That is for the entire financial year 20 ending 31st of March 21, the refund or cancellation has to be made prior to September 21. So now most of the projects where it is in an initial stage of construction, maybe this is going to take more than 2 years or 2.5, 3 years. So after 3 years, if it is cancelling, the amount originally paid, you will not be able to give a credit note and offset it. Then what is the option would be is that you have to go for a refund of originally tax paid. So this is having a two challenges. One is now I am not getting the full money where the money is required. At a later point of time, if you're going for a refund is not automatic. It has its own challenge. It has its own process. There you have to prove there is not having any unjust enrichment. There will be a notice which will be issued, which will be adjudicated, appeal process. So it is going to take its own time. So getting money is late, but I have to upfront pay it. So this is the challenge which is going to be there here. So thereby, whatever come what may, making this as a loan is a better option which you need to work out. The other option what you could look at because of this challenge is that you can look at whether I can register that investor today only. When I am making a sale, I will ask him to take a GST registration. He will accumulate the credit what I am taking, and whenever the sale is happening to the ultimate customer, the sale would be made by your investor customer to the ultimate customer. Thereby, he is going to take a offset of whatever the ITC paid. Again here, this offset is all permissible if you are under 12% scheme. But if you are under 5% scheme, you will charge 5% to investor. When the investor is further selling it to the ultimate customer, he has to charge another 5%, but he will not get an ITC of this 5% which is originally paid. Subject to we have other provision of looking at it, and which Mr. Madhukar is going to take care of this. He is going to give us an insight whether this 5% is a mandatory at all, or can we go for 12% for even the new project. So he is going to give the insight on that. So this is another alternative which you could look at if you are under a 12% scheme. So these are the issues which is going to come up when you are looking at an underwriting of stocks. So the next thing which requires a discussion is the discount offer. So now there is also a chance that the developers or the builders will be forced to give the discounts to retain the customer and for not having the cancellation, not going for the cancellation. So this is something which could happen in the market. Now the question comes up is that if I am offering a discount, can I pay the GST only of the net of discounts? Like coming back to my own example, 1 crore was the agreed AOS. Now you are giving a discount of 10 lakh rupees. Can I pay GST only on 90 lakhs is a question which is going to come. So here we have to carefully look at this discount which you are offering. Are you offering for your upcoming installations or for the past installments, which has been already become due? So if it is for your upcoming installments, it is very easy. That is the installments which is getting due after you have given a discount. So today there somebody has approached and you are giving a discount today for the installments which is becoming due in the month of June. Then you will be able to do an amendment to AOS or a addendum or a supplementary agreement has to be entered, and you can enter into a revised value or give a discount, and you can issue an invoice showing the particular discount, and there will be no GST on the discount amount. It will be only on the net amount the GST can be paid. This is a simple thing to do. Now, if you are offering a discount for the payment which you are supposed to receive in the month of March, which he did not pay for because of the crisis, he will come and sit with you in the month of June and he will say that if you give me this discount, I may consider continuing, otherwise I am cancelling, and thereby you end up giving him a discount for the installment which was already due, on which you have already paid tax. Then there is going to be a challenge, because this becomes a post-sale discount to the extent of that particular installment. For the future installments, no problem. For that old installment, it becomes a post-sale discount. One of the conditions of the post-sale discount is this sort of a discount which will be given should be known at the time of entering into your agreement of the sale. So if your agreement of sale is not providing, allowing this discount will be having lot of challenge. Can I do an amendment of the AOS or do a supplementary agreement to include this clause or something? This will all be treated as an afterthought. So this particular thing is going to be challenged if you want to give it for a discount for the past installment. But if you are giving for a future installments, it is pretty easy, but the documentation should be kept in place. Credit note is something which you may have to issue B2B or B2C as the case may be for all your past installment due discount, if at all you are going ahead taking that particular benefit. The other issue which comes up is cancellation flags. So once you have given an offer, now if you are not giving a discount is not given, then the other thing would be your cancellation of the flats, where the flat gets actually cancelled. So this I have actually told you at the time of the investor. If it has been cancelled, whatever GST earlier paid, that can be adjusted against the other receipt which is coming in the month of cancellation. Say for example, today in the month of May, somebody cancelled the flat and you returned the entire amount what he had paid. So there was a customer who had paid some 10 lakh rupees and you had already remitted 1.2 lakh rupees of GST to the government, and he came today and you cut a check and gave him the entire 10 lakh rupees. So now that 1.2 lakh rupees will be adjusted against any other receipts which you have got it in the month of May, which you are supposed to pay. You will make a payment less than that. Now the issue comes up is what will happen in the month of May? No customer has come and paid me the installment, or by the month of May I already got an OC and post OC sales are not subjected to GST. I don't have old pending installments. So you are actually out of the tax net. So there is no question of making the payment. So in such case, wherever possible, you can give this refund only in the month of receipt, wherever it is possible and adjustment is possible. If it is not there, then the law provides that you have to go for a refund route. Here also the cap is 30th September, like I have already explained. So if you are going beyond 30th September, then you don't have an option but to go for a refund route. So this is on the cancellation of the flat. Another thing which comes up, which is a common practice, is any cancellation the builder also withheld certain particular amount. Sometimes it is an ad hoc amount of 25,000. Sometimes it is like 10% or 15% of the consideration which has been already paid. So this would also be there in the agreement of sale. Now the question comes up is that the cancellation charges which you are withholding, treating it as some other income, additional income which has been coming, whether this will be subjected to GST. If it is being subjected to GST, whether it will be 5 or 12% as the case may be, or it should be at 18%. So here department is of the view that the cancellation should be suffering tax at 18% GST, because there is something in schedule 2 of the GST which says tolerance of an act or a situation, and this is the service deemed service which you are providing. So here what has to be considered is that schedule 2 is only for classification. Deeming that to be a service has been removed in 2019 with a retrospective effect from 2017. So thereby this is no more having a challenge. So what you have to look at, you have to see whether it is in the form of a damages for a breach of contract, or it is a consideration which is coming for supplying something. So if you can make it very clear from your AOS and from your terms of the agreement with the customer that this amount is been withheld as a damages for a breach of contract, that will not be subjected to GST at all. However, you will also not be able to adjust the total amount. That means that when this 1 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees has been given, you withhold 1 lakh rupees and you give him only 9 lakh rupees to the customer. If you are given 9 lakh rupees, you have paid GST on the entire 10 lakhs, 1.2 lakhs you have already paid. What you can make an adjustment is only to the extent of refund. So the balance 1.2 lakhs, it will suffer tax at the rate which was applicable to the installment. So this is something which you have to be careful about when you are dealing with the cancellation of the flats. The next issue is that compensation for delay in possession. Now, because of what all the challenges which has been there could be a chance that the delivery could be delayed. The possession promised date may be exceeded. Of course, for RERA and all those things, it has been safeguarded and some extension and all has been proposed as far as the compliance with RERA is concerned, but with the customer, still that something could be there. So here there is a legal thing which is can be looked at as a shelter, is a force majeure clause or your frustration of a contract, where there was an impossibility of fulfilling that particular condition because of the lockdown, whatever that exact lockdown period of 2 months or 2.5 months, whatever it has been there, that particular month where you are not allowed to do a construction, that period has to be extended. Something like that could be looked at. But if your extension is not only because of this lockdown practical possibility, but also practical impossibility, but also because of your some financial stress which you may undergo in next 6 to 8 months, thereby the delay is further, then maybe your force majeure clause also may not be helping you. So thereby by chance you end up paying this particular compensation. Can we look at that the net consideration only should be subjected to GST? That is 1 crore is my AOS, and because of this delay in consideration, 2 lakh rupees is something which I have to give it in form of a rental compensation or whatever it is as per your agreement of sale. So can I pay GST only on 98 lakhs? Answer is yes, it could be done. If it is provided in your AOS, this could be treated as deficiency in provision of service. A credit note has to be given, and the GST could be adjusted against the further against the payment which you will receive from other customer in that particular month. So this is possible. You have to carefully plan this particular issue. So after that, the next one is the 5% scheme. Whoever is opted for an ongoing project where you have opted for a 5% scheme, or a new project you have gone under 5% scheme, one of the conditions for you to look at is that you procure 80% of your inputs from a registered sources only. Because when this 5% scheme was announced, a lot of builders felt very happy that if it is 5%, it is very good, something which has been happened, because most of the builders plan to procure the goods without invoice or without payment of GST. Thereby, their net impact of the project would have been only 5%. to tap this, what department did in that notification itself is that you have to pay 80% of your inputs, you have to pay GST. That is on an average, you may pay 20% because cement is at 28. You may end up paying about 15 to 20% of GST on 80%. Plus you have to pay on the entire 105%. That is the new scheme which has been there. So how to come out of this particular scheme is something which Madhukar is going to take it immediately after this particular slide. But what I'm saying is, if you are at a 5% scheme, what you have to look at is you have to procure from the composition dealer, so that composition dealer is also a registered dealer. Thereby you will be able to procure at that concessional rate of 1%. For services it is at 6%. So you will be able to procure that particular thing from the composition dealer. Thereby there is going to be a straight saving. If you are not doing this, there is a shortfall of 80%. Then you have to pay 18% of the GST. So this is something which you could look at. And this 80% is looked at on a year on year, not at the project level. So that year on year planning also you may have to procure. Maybe your procurement for 31st of March would have been very critical. But once your 31st March is already been done, I don't think so much can be done now, but still you may have to look at this particular clause wherever you are under 5%. Another interesting thing which you could look at is that many of your vendors would have giving more than one services, which will be composite, service or a supply which has been provided together. So thereby there is going to be a mix of different rate of tax. One is at 18%, another is 28%. Say for example, one of your equipment lift or something, I think now it is 18, earlier it was 28. There are certain inputs which is at 28%. Now there is a labor charges which is at 18%. Both put together has been bundled and charged you at 28%. You can look at whether this can be given to two different independent vendors, or you can bifurcate it as a two independent contract, one awarded after the completion and termination of the other contract, and thereby coming out of your composite or a mixed supply. Thereby on that whatever that 18% on labor charges, you will be able to save that 10%. So this could be a mix of 5 with 12. This could be a mix of 12 with 18. This could be a mix with 18 with 28, 12 with 28. All those things is possible wherever there is a multiple supplies which has been there and it has been taxed at the higher rate, although there is one lower rate of product which has been there. These are the contract which you can closely look at as to how I can plan my procurement. Thereby I'll having a lesser impact of tax is something which you may have to look at this particular juncture. It is very important for you to look at. Now the important question is that, is it mandatory for me for going for a 5% scheme for a project which I am going to start after 1st of April 2019 or today onwards? If I am starting, whether at all is a mandatory, or can I go back to 12% with ITC, is something now my partner Madhukar is going to take it. Over to you, Madhukar sir.
Two minutes, sir. Madhukar sir is joining.
Okay. Yes, some issues, Arjun. Arjun, is Mr. Madhukar sir is having some issues in continuing this?
I am on, Sudhir.
Okay, sir.
That
Sure.
band below, it was not coming at all. So sorry for the short technological glitch. Good evening to all. As Sudhir was saying, the issue which we want to discuss now is whether the GST of 12% with ITC can be enforced and opted for even for projects post 1st April. This is the question, because there was an understanding that post 1st April it is mandatory, and therefore that is the issue which we'll be examining now. Next, sorry, Sudhir, you'll have to go to the one minute. I think too many people are using it. Yeah. Okay. The question which comes is that if you look at the law, whether it is the service tax law of the past or the GST law presently, there are two types of exemptions, concessions, etc. An exemption can be conditional or it could be unconditional. If it is an unconditional exemption, then it's called an absolute exemption. And in such cases, we do not have a choice but to follow the absolute exemption. However, if you look at this 5% scheme which has come, it is not without condition. It has a number of conditions which are, in fact, the conditions run to several pages, and therefore it is a conditional exemption. So the question which comes now is, if there is a conditional exemption, can I opt to not go for that exemption or that concession? There are the law, of course, is very clear that it is a mandatory to follow. However, this is not legally tenable is our understanding. And for this, other than the understanding that only if there is a absolute exemption made, we also decision in 2015 of Pro Limited. In this case, what had happened is that on the when I import goods, there is a amount liable to be added to my imported value of 1%. Whether that 1% should be added or not was the question which was raised and litigated. The people importing said, when I can find out what are those components and I can determine the value of what has to be added, how can you compulsorily ask me to add 1% value? Based on this argument, the Supreme Court said that when there is something on which you are adding an amount, only if it is clear, and if it is unclear, then only you can add that 1%. And therefore, the measure is not proper and there is a confusion in the measure. There is also a principle in indirect taxes, in excise, service tax and GST also, that where the measure fails, the levy will fail. This is one of the point which is very important. The second point is that the enabling of ITC is through section 16, which says that you are eligible to take the ITC, but it also says that the ITC can be restricted as prescribed. Now that prescription has to come in the rules. Whereas if you look at the you look at the ITC barred in this real estate project, it comes through a notification. Can a notification matters in tax matters. Therefore, in the past, it has been held that the notification, if it goes a rule, then it would be considered as arbitrary and unconstitutional. Anything which is unconstitutional is not anything which is not in line with the Constitution. Any law is law. Like the GST law, to that extent, would be invalid. First, secondly, the 5% scheme is increasing the tax burden and not decreasing the tax burden. Let's look at the past. If I was a builder, I would be taking credit on an average for my entire construction, where my credit would have been probably 11% or so, 10 to 11%, whereas my output tax would be 12%. So that it would be 1% or 2%, number one. Number two, as far as my cash flow is concerned, since I keep procuring goods and the building gets sold more towards the completion stage, then there would be a need, there would be an accumulation of credit. So though there is a net difference between 12 and 10 or 12 and 11, this cash flow wouldn't get impacted because my credit would be sufficient to take care of that payment of that 12% on each installment. Whereas the 5% scheme is additional because ITC is not there at all. And when this particular notification came, the notification came in saying that it is in the interest of public. But is it in the interest of public is the question. It is not in the interest of public, and therefore even the basis of public interest in this scheme can be challenged. Let me look at the next point. The reduced cost per square feet of the flat, as GST at 5% would increase the cost of the flat because I am losing the ITC benefit, correct? And therefore my final cost for the flat as a builder is actually increasing. What are the problems which I have? My problem is that I'll be paying that 5% in cash, which I need not pay. Further, my cash flow also is getting affected. In the earlier case, my net cost might have been 1 or 2%, whereas in the second case, as far as working capital was concerned, my cash flow was not at all affected because I had accumulation. And now I cannot use the ITC, and therefore my cash flow is also impacted. Earlier, I also, because I am doing so many projects, and in general, projects are getting sold towards the time of completion, the ITC in one project could be used for the other project. I am coming to a completion of one project where net cash flow I'll have to pay in cash and I cannot use ITC of that project. However, I have started some other project where I'll have accumulation for 1 or 2 years. That credit also could have been used and my final ITC payable could have been postponed. This is something which is very important to understand. The point which we need to understand here also is the point which was made by Sudhir, that if 5% opted, then under that 80% scheme, my procurement should be more from composition dealer. And in case I am having a composite contract where I have goods and services, even then, if I am having separate contracts for the goods, which will come under composition, and services which may come under 6% composition, again I am looking at saving of some cost. That is, if I am okay with 5%, that is the scheme which will work as Sudhir had explained earlier. Yeah, next. The next issue which comes is that as far as the law is concerned, the law in this regard in real estate developed from a number of years, 1980s, I would say. From that time, the government has been trying to, the tax authorities, especially the VAT authorities, were trying to value the goods involved and tax on the value addition on goods. However, all this time, the third component, which was the land component, was not really examined carefully. And therefore, what we would do in the pre-GST era was that you had two contracts, or in the contract itself, you had two bits, value of land and value of the goods and services provided separately. However, now what we see is that where the department was thinking that people are playing around with the value of land, they thought that they can bring in a provision so that they can plug that loophole. While plugging that loophole, instead of taking the actual value of land deduction or even the guidance value of the sub-registrars across the country, where the value of land can be determined, market value can be determined, all these three aspects they forgot and tried to tax the land also. For example, a project in Jayanagar, where our office is, the construction, if you want to buy a land, if you want to buy a building, possibly it will be around 20,000 rupees a square feet. If it is 20,000 rupees a square feet and 1:2 ratio is also there, then the land per square feet would come to 10,000. So construction should be maximum 10,000. However, what they have done is they have said you can claim only 1/3 as a deduction. So I would get only 6,000 as a deduction. Let's look at it practically. What would be my cost of construction? As you all know, even if I do a super construction, my cost of construction will be 3,500 or 4,000 at most. Interiors anyway, the person who buys it himself will do. So against a value of 4,000, which is the real construction cost, now I am made to pay 12% or 18% on the 12,000 or 13,000 rupees, which comes to almost the construction cost itself. Is this something which can be called reasonable? Second, by coming in and giving such a deduction, land is being taxed. Even in the same example, you will find construction is 4,000, 16,000 was the land. So therefore only 4,000 should have been taxed, but they are taxing around 13,000. Therefore, through the back door of valuation, can land be taxed? You know that in the constitution, it is very clear, only the states can tax land. How can you put a deemed valuation when actual price can be determined? There is also advance ruling which confirms this, which is against the view which I have stated till now. But we have to remember, advance rulings are not judicial views. There is no member from judicial background. It is at the level of Joint Commissioner, and they are people with strong tax background, and they were all part of this tax terrorism which was there earlier and continues today also. Therefore, all decisions, almost all decisions I should say, are biased towards revenue or the department. One more point is that any of the advance rulings cannot be binding on everybody. It is not even of persuasive value for others. It's binding on the applicant. However, the applicant has no choice but to follow it unless he goes in appeal and litigates further. If we look at this particular thought process which I shared with you, it may be very easy in villa projects because there is a sale deed of land and then the agreement of sale for the construction takes place. Here you may have much more safety. In other cases, there would be disputes. Since the amounts involved in this are very, very large, therefore there would be certainly disputes in this case. It is not that I have given you a view, you just claim it and the department will agree to. They will fight that and say that you are only eligible for 1/3 value as land deduction and not the reality or the guidance value or the market value. One of the points, one of the things which can help you when you dispute this would be that in the contract itself you have a value for land which is clear, number one, or you could adopt the guidance value of the registrar. One of the things which supports you, one of the arguments or defense which can support you is that in the GST Council minutes, this particular matter was discussed. This is also a matter of public record available, where the state ministers were not willing to have this 1/3 deduction because it could lead to them losing their right to tax the land. But however, finally the decision was made that 1/3 is the value of land. So the GST Council minutes also supports in some way the argument which we are putting forward, that the actual value of the land or guidance value of the land should be taken. There is also a third value which can be taken, which I think is another alternative. Instead of taking deduction for land, you can go for cost of construction plus 10%. When I look at the valuation, when the open market value has some doubt, when I am not able to arrive at open market value, the similar value can be taken. If I can't get that, then cost of construction plus 10% is possible. Therefore, maybe when you make this particular claim, you should go to your construction cost, get a cost accounting certificate and pay the tax on cost of construction plus 10%, maybe add a leeway of 5% or so for the variation between the timing of the apartments, and this certificate can be taken once in 3 months or once in 6 months, and you can follow the cost of construction. Therefore, in my considered view, the actual value of land can be taken, or even cost of construction can be taken. For which, what is it that you should do? You should have an Excel for it, Excel calculation for it, and see whichever is beneficial. And after that option, after intimation to the, but as I said earlier, there will be a dispute on this. One more alternative thing which can be done, or simultaneous thing which can be done, is this particular matter is very important for the whole industry, and therefore industry should take it up in a special way by way of representation, and also bring out all the objections brought in the GST Council and approach the government to make it reasonable and not to tax land value at all. This would be my thought process on this particular aspect. Can we take the next slide, please? There are some judgments of the Supreme Court which are of some value to this, where they have said that the measure of the levy will not be controlled by the nature of the levy. So long as a reasonable nexus is discernible between the measure and the nature of levy, then they could operate separately. Does this mean that government can put any value? It should not be unreasonable and it should not be arbitrary. That is what is very important to be looked at. And as I mentioned earlier, in the case of Wipro, it was held that when the actual charges paid are available, in this case, actual construction charges are payable. The rule also allows you to add 10% value. Then why should the fiction of this 1/3 be there? And this is fully supported by this Wipro decision. In the case of Acer, where there was an issue at that time between software which was not being taxed, services were not being taxed at that particular point of time, whether that service could be added to the to the imported cost, to the manufactured cost, was a question when the software was optional. They said that excise duty could not be collected indirectly by taxing. So both these, all these decisions go to support our thought process that the actual value of land deduction or the cost of construction construction plus 10% deduction could be an alternative which could be examined and taken forward by the industry and by various other people. If we read this along with the earlier point which I made of that 12%, then you have even a bigger advantage. Can we go to the next one, please? Sudhir, you want to say something?
I will add when it is required.
Yeah, fine, fine. Yeah. Next. The next decision, which is of the Delhi High Court also, where it had looked at the service tax rules. There also it was clearly set out when, based on the accounts records maintained, the value of the service could be determined. And in this case, we can determine from books of accounts records maintained as well as a cost accountant certificate. We could then rely on this case also. There is also a decision of Larsen and Toubro and BC Srinivas Shetty. These are all, BC Srinivas Shetty is a very old case, very celebrated case. More recently, you have Suresh Kumar Bansal case. And in all these cases, they say that if the valuation fails, the levy fails. If I cannot determine the value, then levy will fail. And this ad hoc system which is being followed, which is in our understanding illegal, makes the levy itself fail. So this is an alternative argument which should be taken in case you are making any representation or you are fighting any of your cases based on this, on the point that you are going on cost of construction plus 10% or you are taking actual land value deduction. Next, please. There is one more concept which we would like to examine, and this concept has come from the service tax era. Can we have the next slide? The point is that I am a builder and somebody comes to me in the month of May. My building is completed 90%. Have I provided him the construction, am I providing him the construction service for that 90% which is complete? Is a question which came up. Original question was whether in a joint development agreement works contract is there, would it be liable to tax itself? In the L&T decision, they said this also works contract could also be a species where there would be a liability on the builder, but at that time they looked at certain points. They looked at what was it that was already an immovable property, what is that which is going to be transferred further. In this example which we took, only 10% of construction is still liable. Therefore, only that 10% should be liable to tax is what Supreme Court in the L&T decision looked at. All the other services which were done before that time are services in the nature of self-service by the builder. This is also very much something which stands to reason. Can we have the next slide? If we take an example, one person comes when the construction is about to start and the entire construction is done where all the services of construction are given to that person. 100% of the construction is done after the date of agreement. Another person comes at 90%. Can he also be charged on 100% construction? It's quite unreasonable. What if it is 99%? Just look at the borderline extreme case. Even if 1% construction is pending, you are going to pay on GST on 100% construction, which again is quite unreasonable. Therefore, the L&T decision that it was a self-service till the person came for booking a flat is something which also can be considered. There are also decisions of Magus Construction in Guwahati High Court where they look at the same type of aspect. There are these retrospective amendments to Schedule 2, which Sudhir also mentioned. Schedule 2 had an entry for construction where they said that this is a deemed supply. So though it's not a supply, we understand it's not a supply. Everything which comes in Schedule 2, government understands that that's not a supply, but they deem it to be a supply. Prior to the amendment, there was a possibility that the government would have come and said, under Schedule 2, this is a deemed supply and therefore the liability comes. However, with effect from 1st of July 2017 itself, the definition of supply has removed the deemed supply from its ambit, and therefore first there should be a supply. And in this case, the supply is only for the 10%, in the case which we mentioned, 90% complete. And therefore, on the 90%, there cannot be a deemed tax applicable. The last point, which is also very important when we look at this particular transaction, is that, as you are aware, post completion, there is no tax. And sale is a transfer of title. In GST, transfer is what has been set out. And if I have to say there has to be a transfer, there has to be a sale deed. And if there is a sale deed, there is no supply. So therefore, taking these totally into consideration, one of the arguments which can be taken is that only after a person comes for booking, this can be taken, the liability would arise. And obviously under this, your ITC also would be less. Now let me try and also look at what is the impact if you are going to take my argument number 1 and should I take argument number 2 that booking is after the person comes to me. The answer to this will be based on what is the value of the goods of the apartment which you are selling and what is the construction, what is the construction cost. If your margin is very high, you are making a super luxury apartment, then the first argument which we took of opting for taking full credit and opting for 12% may not be very wise. In that case, you could look at this option of only going forward after the flat is booked. In the case that it is a very competitive construction, then probably your ITC will be nearing to 10 or 11%, and therefore in that case you should only go with the earlier scheme. In case you want to take both these schemes together, you would obviously have to reverse the credit to the extent of the construction which is complete, because that would be used for supply which is not taxable. That is also something which is possible. I thought these points I would bring to your notice. Let us take the next one onwards. I think Sudhir will take, and I will come back in the end.
Thank you, sir. Few things which I wanted to add here. I think Madhukar sir, can you put it on mute? It's echoing actually.
I have put it on.
Okay, done. Few things which I wanted to add to what Madhukar sir has just given is that the land, the construction portion, to the extent the customer has come to me, before the customer has come to me, whatever the construction which has been happened is something also could be looked at to keeping it out of the tax net, especially in the cases where the 5% scheme has been opted, because either way the ITC is nothing to do with that particular portion. If you are under 12%, then you may also have to reverse the ITC to the extent of that becoming an immovable property. So this is what you have to consider this. So this has a small background of the law under the service tax regime, where initially the service tax regime, the taxability was nothing to do with your completion certificate or otherwise. So that is where this beautiful judgment of Mangus Construction Guwahati High Court came, which was referred to by Mr. Madhukar, is that they took a very beautiful argument saying that, please see, when the customer is coming to me, what is the document he is entering into? He is entering into a document called as agreement of sale. And I do a construction. Whenever I'm doing a construction, who is the owner of the flat? Owner of the flat is the builder himself. The customer becomes the owner only after execution of a sale deed or registration of this agreement of sale, as the case may be. So that is happening when that is happening after the entire completion and receipt of the money, the sale deed has been executed. So they argued saying that whenever the construction has been done, prior to execution of the sale deed, prior to customer becoming an owner, I am doing a construction undoubtedly, but that is for the self construction. So thereby there is no GST to this extent, which was agreed by the High Court and thereafter agreed by the department, and 108 circular was been issued under the erstwhile law. After they realized that yes, this is something which is right, to overcome this, then there was a concept of a deeming fiction which was brought into the tax net, where they said, I don't care whether he is a owner or otherwise, whatever construction which you are doing to a customer before getting the completion certificate is deemed to be a service. It's actually not a service, I agree with the court, but for the purpose of collection of the tax, I am deeming this to be a service. The same deeming fiction was there under Schedule 2 under GST, which was also a deemed service initially. Later they amended the law and they told it is no more a deemed service, but only for classification purpose you can go to this particular schedule. So thereby that Mango High Court construction case may be further again looked into now also, to look at whether the tax to the extent of the completed construction before the customer is coming to me for any sort of a booking is something which could be examined for us to take a new stand. With this, I'll get into the next important issue, which is about the joint development agreement. So this is one of the common thing which every builder, every developer who is doing a JDA will be having a lot of queries on this. So again, I am restricting on to the applicability of tax and an alternative way of looking at this particular arrangement. I am not getting in depth of explaining if at all you want to pay, when it has to be paid, what value, what rate. I am not taking you in depth. So for me to understand the implication of JDA, one has to understand that there are two transactions when you are entering into a JDA. Rather, there are two supplies which has been entered into a JDA. So assume a scenario that I go to a particular, I am a landowner, go to a particular contractor and ask him that I have a bit of land which is maybe about 10,000 square yards. So why don't you do a construction of a complex of about say 100 apartments on this and give it to me? So he will say, okay, 10 crores is the charges for this, and you have to pay this 10 crores. And if I agree, he is going to charge me GST on 10 crores and give me an invoice, and I am going to pay him. After that, I will go back to him and I will also make an arrangement saying that I have a land, I want to sell it to you. Are you going to buy? Yes, I am going to buy, and he will give me 10 crores to me. So here, this is a transaction of sale of land which is not subjected to tax. Now, what happens in this JDA is that instead of these two transactions which has been settled in the cash, it has been non-monetarily settled. That 10 crores of construction value, instead of me paying him and again he giving me for buying my land, I have merged it together where there is a barter of two things which has been happening. So when you are looking at a joint development agreement, you have to look at, there are two transactions. Transaction number one is when you are making a construction, you as a builder, when you are making a construction on the land owned by the landowner, the built up area which you are going to hand over, this is one particular supply. Second supply is that whatever the land or the development rights which you are receiving has to be treated as a second supply. So these are the two things which is going to be there. So how the leviability and all those things, it is there in this slide which we could circulate it to you, but I'm not going into it because it goes into a totally different tangent. But broadly what it says that the first transaction will be subjected to GST, and you have to pay for all the new projects, you have to pay the tax based on the first sale value, and you can pay at 5%. when you have to discharge is at the time of completion certificate. This is what they say for the first one as far as the law is concerned. Second is the second transaction is that whatever the TDR or the leasehold rights is there, if it is an exemption, that is a second transaction. If it is a residential project, it is exempted to the extent of what builder is selling to his customer prior to OC. Post the development rights pertaining to the flats of the builders which is unsold as on the date of OC would be subjected to tax. This would be subjected to tax under reverse charge mechanism by the developer at the applicable rate, that is 5%, which is going to be there. If it is a commercial project, there is no exemption and you have to pay the tax on the entire amount. So this is the broadly the concept which is there for the both the transaction. So now look at we can look at whether there is any liability at all. Can we take an alternative stand here is something which we could look at. So one of the things for the first transaction, wherever I am giving the built up area to the land owner, one of the things could be looked at is that there is a barter of two immovable property which is happening. What is that? I am handing over a building to him and he is handing over a land to me. So there is a barter of a building which is an immovable property against a land which is an immovable property. Thereby this should be not subjected to GST is one of the very valued argument which could be taken. There are n number of decisions which has been there as far as the VAT regime is concerned. None of the state VATs levied tax on this particular transaction because they clearly treated this as a barter or an exchange of two immovable property or whatever, two goods or whatever it is. They treated it as a barter. So thereby it was not taxed. So that is something which we could look at, arguing that it is not liable to tax at all. This is one ground. The another ground what could be looked at is this is the decision of Vasanta Green project of Hyderabad Tribunal, which is pending before the Supreme Court, which gives a very beautiful theory. What it says that see the developer, whatever the cost of construction pertaining to builder share, developer share and the owner share, both put together along with his margin has been recovered from the customer when he has sold his share and GST has been paid on that. So thereby the liability to the extent of construction service handed over to the landowner has also suffered the tax when the tax is been collected and paid from the customer. So this is something which has been there. The logic equally hold goods even under the GST regime, although this decision pertaining to service tax. However, this is pending before the Supreme Court for the final review. We and wait and watch how this is going to taking shape. But this is something which is available as an option. After that is the development rights. That is the second transaction. That is the receipt of development rights by the landowner to the developer. So this also can be looked as a sale of land and there is no transfer of right. So if you look at from the landowner point of view, earlier he had a land, now that land has gone from his hand. So thereby there is a transfer of land which is happening. The development right is incidental to usage of the land which has been agreed to be given to the developer is something which we could look at. Of course, your document should speak all these things whatever I'm saying. Your document also should support this particular argument. So your joint development agreement has to be carefully drafted if at all you are taking this particular stance. So this is one stand where you can say that it is not subjected to tax. Further, even if it is a development right, it is a benefit arising out of a land which needs to be treated as a land only. Thereby it is a sale of land, no, so not subjected to GST. This is also again, there is a DLF depreciation in the service tax which supports this particular view, and there is also something which is going on as far as the some Mumbai High Court or something. This transaction is this questioning is something which is there being looked at. Next is the transaction in immovable property, similar to whatever it is land. You can also look at this is a benefit arising out of land and which is also to be treated as an immovable property. So this is another ground which you will be able to take. Then thereby both the transaction number one, that is construction service to supply of construction service by developer to landowner, Transaction number 2, supply of development right when the landowner to the developer, both could be kept out of the tax net if you are taking this particular argument. However, please note all the options which has been given today by Mr. Madhukar and me, the land value deduction, the construction area, everything, all this has to be tested judicially. So it is not that this view is going to be a cakewalk, but if at all you are under crisis, you are not in a position to pay because of whatever the challenges which has been there. If at all you want to opt for litigating it, these are all the options which is available. This is what we wanted to bring to your notice. With this, I am going to the last issue which requires a discussion. Thereafter, I'll leave it to Mr. Madhukar, and then we can open the floor for question answer. So the ITC on construction against the renting of immovable property. So I am doing a construction of say a mall or an office spaces, and I have engaged a contractor. He has charged me GST, and whatever this office space or a mall, I am renting it out to my customer and I am collecting a GST. The simple question comes up is whether I will be eligible to take the set off of this ITC paid to my vendor against the GST which has been collected from the customer. Can this particular set off can be done is a simple question. On the strict reading of section 17(5), which is a blocked credit under the GST provision, there is no, you will not be eligible for taking the credit at all. However, the Safari Retreats has gone beyond 17(5) and it has looked at a judicial reasoning why a credit should not be eligible at all. If there is no construction service, there is no building and there is no renting. So thereby the construction service is something which is basically required for the particular of business, and thereby it should be eligible for credit is something which the Safari Retreats has been given, and this particular decision is also subjected to review under the Supreme Court. So this is something which you could be looking at. So now if at all you are under this particular, you are a developer of a commercial spaces and you have a lot of construction related credit which has been accumulated, what should I do is something which is going to be coming up in your mind. So one of the options for you is that you have to, if you are registered and you have you can do a registration and you can take the credit whatever has been paid, and you can also look at utilizing the same. Because this is all under dispute, I strictly recommended that you intimated this to the department, and if at all there is a notice which is coming, it is better to fight the notice today rather than being under being in the dark for 5 years and fight an higher amount notice after 5 years. Fight it today, you are going to get a result, yes or no. So that is one of the things which you could look at. If you are a bit of conservative, then what you have to look at is you can take the credit, don't utilize the same till the final outcome of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agrees with the Safari Retreats Orissa High Court judgment, take the credit. If it is not there, then you reverse the credit. So if you are doing this because you have not utilized, this will not be subjected to interest. Of course, there could be a penalty which could be proposed, but if you are intimating to department, the penalty also may not arise. So this is another option. You want to be further more conservative? No, Sudhir, I don't even want to take the risk of doing this particular interest and fighting for the penalty also I don't want to take. Then what you could look at is you could take the credit and after that you can reverse it under protest. So what is that going to happen? Sudhir, why should I do? Why I have to take and why I have to reverse? What is the advantage of this is that there is a time limit for you to take the credit, that is 30th September of the next financial year. Say for example, the credit for the financial year 1920 can be taken up to 30th September 2020. If 30th September 2020 afterwards, even Supreme Court says you are eligible to take the credit, you cannot take the credit for 1920 financial year. So thereby this option enables you to overcome with the timelines. You will be eligible, you will be eligible to claim for a reclaim of a credit. So that is something which you could look at. So before I hand over to Mr. Madhukar for the further best strategy is going to be there, all the options, again I'm repeating, it is not that this is something which is very simple. We are giving this particular possibility. Each of this possibility has to be looked at for your own scenario, your own business needs, and a suitable decision has to be taken. Once the decision has been taken, there is also a calculated risk associated to it, which you should be aware. So any decision which you are taking in this regard, please do get back to the point of contact from our office who is coordinating with you, so that we will be able to better guide you based on your business requirement and the transaction what you are entering into. With this, I'll hand over to Madhukar sir. Later, I'll join back for the question answer. Madhukar sir, over to you.
Thanks, Sudhir. I think you added up something which came into my presentation also. I would like to add two small extensions to what Sudhir talked about, especially in regard to the decision of Orissa High Court in Safari Retreat. Number one is the Orissa High Court also looked at one very important logic, where they said that in case you are selling the property before completion, you are eligible for credit. And when instead of selling, if you are going to rent it, you are restricting the credit. This is something which is not in line with Article 14, which provides for equality before law. This was the first point which may be also considered, and therefore that Orissa High Court decision has two. The second part of it is something which is little technical. I would say that when you are constructing a property for the purpose of rental, then the property can also well be bifurcated into two parts. Those parts of the property which are plant and machinery. For example, you have a chilling plant, you have a number of ACs, you have escalators, you have hoists, you have access control, all of which is part and parcel of this building. If you were to right from the beginning bifurcate this, then as far as the credit relating to the plant and machinery is concerned, under 17(5), there is no restriction. So that maybe out of a building worth 100 crores, maybe 15-20 crores could be bifurcated into this. And if it is so, this part of it will not be even subjected to litigation. And in the past, factories have used this. For example, a factory is putting up a big press, 100-ton press. Obviously, it cannot have the same foundation as it requires for a normal, say, sewing machine. Therefore, the foundation and the structures which are there, structures could be there for overhead crane, things like that. Even the steel cement which is used to do that, make that particular equipment would be capitalized along with the equipment, and the GST input tax credit on that also could be taken. In the past, in central excise, more than 2 decades, factories have been taking this credit. One more example I could give you is of the effluent treatment plant. If you're treating effluents, you will have large tanks. Sometimes they'll be half an acre in size. And that large tank is obviously a civil construction. But the entire cost of that construction, the steel, cement, the motors used, the pipes used, everything is taken as a plant and machinery, and credit on that is available. So there is also a safe bit of credit available in ITC, which we need not even refer to the Safari decision. So that 20% additional at least can be taken safely. I will like to close. I think we have taken a little extra time, so I would like to give you enough time. There is a general understanding which in our 30 years of experience I have seen. We look at where all value can be added to the customer, and real estate has a need in this regard also. One of the good things to do, or the best practices which a company can do, is your internal personnel who is going to do your GST. If you have outsourced it to a competent professional, no issues. If you have an internal person, he has to have an understanding of GST. Otherwise, what happens is that he makes a lot of mistakes, maybe mistakes in availing ITC, mistakes in reversing ITC, and it can lead to lakhs of rupees or crores of rupees of lost ITC or excess tax paid. He should be well trained and updated regularly. Also, one more point which has become very important in GST is that the original entry has become very important. If that entry is not done properly, if there is a mistake in the original entry, probably this error will carry forward and you may be subjected to a demand after 6 years. Therefore, all original entries, there should be a maker checker, philosophy, internally or externally. Internal audit by professionals with expertise in GST for 2 years, at least going forward 2 years, to prevent errors with focus on controls is a very good thing. Remember, it's not rectification of error is always expensive. Interest costs are there, penalty costs are there, interaction with department costs are there. So if you identify errors early, rectify it and ensure corrective controls are in place, 90% of your issues will disappear. One of the points in GST is that we have seen that since the GST portal, right from the time when GST came in, is creating problems, uploading has become one of the understanding of compliance. That means if I have uploaded my return or I have uploaded my GSTR1 3B, then I have finished the job. But what is inside that? Is that correct? If every mistake in that is going to come up because the department, unlike in the past, is not depending on individuals, it's depending on the system, and a lot of information which is available in the system would be crunched. You have already seen that you have received notices for difference in the 2A and your GSTR 3B, and this was done without manual without a manual interface at all. Everybody got a notice. The system gave the figures. Everybody got a notice. This is going to increase. However, in this COVID period, I think government is going to go a little slow on it. However, remember, interest is ticking all the time. Therefore, very important to ensure that you do not have disputes in the future. And one of the points which Sudhir also mentioned, informing the department in advance. In the past, we used to only tell what is necessary. In these cases where there is so much confusion in the law, and you may be trying out some innovative, you can say tax planning or structuring of GST, some of which was mentioned by us. All these should be done in writing. Whatever advice you take from whoever it is should not be through seminar, should be by a written opinion, and also you should disclose to the department, this is the view I am taking, thereby limiting the liability. As whatever we have talked about today, about those 5 options, those 5 options are the things we talked about in structuring transactions and planning. Optimizing credits and benefits also are important. Sometimes in your industry also, refunds could be there in certain cases where flats gets cancelled. In such cases, that would be something which is important. One more general strategy which is good is that as transactions are becoming more and more complex and numbers are increasing, automation of your compliances, automation of your accounts, automation of your reconciliation, and ensuring that all the reports which you have to file, all the returns which you have to file are complete, and will also ensure that you save time and money going forward. I would also like to reiterate what Sudhir said. Today's session, we have only highlighted what is possible in the circumstances which you are, in the facts you have, the agreements you have. whether the JDA or the agreements with your prospective customers, many of them also will be required for coming to a final conclusion for yourself. And finally, the verification of the alternatives through a proper Excel, putting all the liabilities in place can also ensure which is the better option. So this has to be done very carefully and also with a pinch of salt. With this, I would also say that when you litigate, better you don't litigate, make somebody else litigate. And if there is a general consensus in the industry, then you latch on to those people who are having competent people, and maybe you get tagged to them so that your dispute is in the call. That is also something which is. I would like to thank all of you for a very patient hearing, and we will take questions, and Sudhir will answer. I may add.
Vasan sir.
Hello. Thank you, Madhukar sir and Sudhir. Can I read the questions now? Sudhir, am I audible?
Sure, you are audible. Please do.
Yeah. The first question is, in case of site formation work entrusted to a contractor, is it necessary to get registration?
It is for the contractor?
I am also unable to get the questions clearly. It says in case of site formation work entrusted to a contractor. That means, while if you are giving only a contractor to do the site formation, whether you are required to get registration or the contractor is both the options.
Maybe
I mean, question can be for both the things.
Yeah, say maybe there is a contractor who is doing only the site formation. So whether he has to take a registration is something maybe which may have been asked for. So that contractor, if he is doing more than the prescribed limit of, say, if it is supply of service 20 lakhs, then he has to take a registration there, and he has to charge you a local tax, that is the CGST plus SGST onto you. But you being a recipient is nothing to do with your contractor. It is only with your supplies what you have to look at, that you have to look at for taking the registration. Yeah, Vasan sir.
Okay. Second question is, can any builder come?
Yeah. Only one addition.
Yeah,
that
sir, your voice is breaking. Yeah.
Only one addition.
You are not clear. Your voice is breaking. Please repeat.
I think it's clear, Vasan sir.
Yeah.
The point is that the builder may like to take registration, because without registration he can't take ITC. So if he is in the ITC availment position, he also needs to take a registration. You can take the next question.
Yeah. Can any builder commit rent payment for the entire period of 36 months, that is till project is completed, to a customer at the time of entering AOS itself? Is it legally tenable in the eyes of law? If so, what should be the GST liability in totality in such cases? Whether it is permitted under the provisions of IT, as there is no asset existing on the date of AOS on which rent is proposed to be paid for the entire duration of the project.
Perfect. I had given an example in my presentation saying that the wherever I had promised that I am going to deliver this project in next 24 months, and there was a delay for 6 months, then the customer was eligible at a per SFT pre-agreed rent as a compensation for the delay. So this I told that it is eligible for a deduction because it amounts to a deficiency in provision of service. There is no deficiency in quality, but it is not delivered on time. Thereby, this is the deficiency in supply. So thereby it will be eligible. Now, if you are entering into a scheme where he says from the day one I am going to pay your rent, which is mostly prevalent in case of the housing societies, where the people who are already staying, that is redevelopment of the housing societies, where the people will be already staying there. They make them vacate and take another premises, and then they do a redevelopment. So thereby, this sort of an arrangement would be there, where upfront the rental payment would be promised, saying that from today onwards, I'm going to give you this rent, so that when you are staying in a different place, you don't incur a cost over it. So this sort of an arrangement could be possible. But all that you have to look at is that how can I structure this into an agreement which is legally binding, is something which you may have to look at. In my view, this can be structured and could be made legally binding because of the reasons which has been involved therein. And we have to look, the GST law may treat this as two different transactions. Transaction number one is that there is a construction service consideration which you are receiving from them. The second is that you paying them the rent as a compensation can be treated as a two different condition, in which case that making the payment on the net tax could be questioned. However, we have to sit with the facts on this to structure this particular transaction, wherein the net payment of only on the net payment GST could be restricted. We may have to look at how to structure this. Yes, Vasant sir.
Yeah. Next question is, can you please explain again on JDA in case of residential project?
JDA, applicability of GST for JDA and residential project. If it is a new project entered after 1st of April 2019, then whatever the built-up area handed over to the landowner will be subjected to GST at the rate of 5%. The valuation for that would be the first sale which is nearest to the JDA. This sale could be either by the developer or by the landowner, whatever which is the nearest sale. That will be the standard valuation for the entire built-up area which has been handed over. When it has to be paid, it has to be paid at the time of obtaining the completion certificate. It has to be paid. So this is the first leg of JDA implication. Second leg of JDA implication is when you are as a builder, you are in recipient of the development rights. If it is residential, the development rights to the extent of the flats received by you, to the extent of flats sold by you prior to completion certificate is exempted, and the unsold flats as on the date of getting the completion certificate would be subjected to GST. Rate would be 5%. Valuation will be the last sale, that is the sale nearest to completion certificate. So that thing has to be taken for the purpose of valuation. If it is under old scheme, there is a lot of confusion. I'm not getting into it. This is broadly which is there as far as the new scheme is concerned. Person, sir.
Yeah. Next question is, I have 4 projects under 12% scheme and 4 projects under 5% scheme. Can I club the GST liability for all the old projects 12% under one umbrella and transfer of unutilized credit to other projects?
Okay. Here thing is that you when you are under a 5% scheme, you are required to maintain a project wise ITC separately, where you have to show the availment and the reversal of the credit. So thereby any inputs which is going to these 4 projects which is under 5% scheme, you will not be eligible to take the ITC. However, if you can take the stand which was explained by Mr. Madhukar, saying that it is not mandatory for me to take this 5% scheme, I will violate the condition of the notification which gives me 5% scheme by taking the credit, then thereby I'll pay 12%. Then all 8 projects put together, the credit can be inter project can be used. But if it is 5% and 12% together, 5% inputs has to be restricted from the day one, you will not be eligible. There could be a common credit which is going to come, and there is going to be a consumption which is happening. You may have to have some costing principles and some mechanism to proportionately avail the credit towards the 12%. The 4 projects within the 12% can be interchangeably usable as long as everything is under the same GSTIN number, no problem. Interchangeably can be used. It can be in a different geographical location. It could be in a different cities in the same state. Still you can use the credit together. One credit can be used for others. No problem. It should be a same GSTIN. Vasant sir.
Yeah. Next question is builder registered under GST with 12% with ITC option. Landowner not registered up to 31st March 2019. He got himself registered later after 1st April 2019. At what rate should landowner sell his flats at 12% with ITC or 5% without ITC?
This is quite a tricky position which has been there. In my view, he has an independent option there because if it is an ongoing project and if you wanted to go for a 12% scheme, you were supposed to file a declaration within the prescribed period for opting to pay under the 12% scheme. And that particular circular also clarified saying that whatever the scheme which the landowner, so developer has taken, the same scheme has to be taken by the landowner. So there is a circular which is going to be there. So now you have to look at what does the landowner wants. He wants to go for 5% scheme. He can please saying that I never opted for the, because of the ongoing project, I never opted for 12%. I am registering now. Thereby, I should be 5% scheme. You can directly go for 5% scheme. If he wants to go for 12% scheme, then he can argue, he can show the circular. Me and my developer cannot be in two different schemes. Maybe there is a procedural lapse in terms of me not taking a registration, me not filing the declaration within the prescribed lives. But I don't have an option but to go for 12% because your own circular is mandating me to go for 12%. Thereby, I am going for 12%. So it is now I can say is the option is available to this landowner either to go for 5 or 12, whichever is beneficial. Like that you can take a ground and you will be able to plan yourself. But in my view, strict interpretation without giving this particular option, the landowner should go at 5% without ITC. Subject to whatever the option which was given by Madhukar sir.
Okay. The next question is what will be the GST on JDA agreement before 1st April 2019? We have received our OC on 5th February 2020.
This is again, if it is a JDA prior to 1st of April 2019, then the GST was applicable for the first transaction, that is the built up area handed over. So GST applicable was on the activity of you doing a joint development agreement. However, the payment of tax was deferred to the date of obtaining the completion certificate in terms of the notification 4/2018. So taking that ground, what you could do is that you will be able, you have to pay the GST at the rate applicable at the date of JDA, the value applicable, that is the first sale value nearest to the JD at the time of JDA, but you are going to pay on 5th of February 2020 because that is what the 4/2018 required you to do. So you will pay at 18% GST or 12% on the first sale value. You can pay the GST there, but you need not pay the interest now. But interest now in the sense from March till date you may have to pay the interest. Otherwise, up to Feb 2020 you can save the interest. This is what could be done. As far as the reverse charge mechanism is concerned, that the development rights is concerned, that will also be subjected to 18% GST. No exemption will be available because exemption is very clear that it is only for the project started after 1st of April 2019. So exemption for the development rights will not be given. Whether either as a reverse charge or as a forward charge, the development charges credit also has to be paid. So you can see this is the position for projects prior to 1st of April 2019. Vasant sir.
Okay, but with this we have completed all the answers to the questions raised. So can we conclude now? Sudhir, anything to add? Madhukar sir?
Nothing from me, Madhukar sir.
I would say that I have not much to add in this turbulent times. Sometimes the need to strengthen ourselves in the understanding of our transactions can be taken, and there are some resources which are available. As far as our firm is concerned, I don't know how many of you have been going on the website, and in case you do want, you can visit our website. There are a number of articles which are there which look at finer aspects. I think a detailed note on these 5 tax planning or tax optimization, ITC maximization, this has been shared with you, and therefore you could possibly look at all that. Sudhir and me also have written a book in real estate which we are revising, and hopefully after revision you could also make use of the same. I don't have anything more to say as far as the subject is concerned. I can only say we all hope that we get normalcy soon and our economy picks up so that we can get along with our lives. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for the patience listening and joining for this webinar. Thank you all. Over to you, Vasudha.
Yeah, we are thankful to all the participants for this webinar during this tough time, and also taking away your valuable time. Thanks to Sudhir and Madhukar for valuable inputs, and thanks to Arjun and everyone for making this a successful webinar. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect.